Okay, do you want to start it, Michael, or should I?
Yeah, go ahead since you have the recording too and everything. So go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, hello. This is October 22nd and our weekly SIG Windows meetup. And so this is being recorded. Be sure to follow the Kubernetes community guidelines in all of your discussions. Um, we've got the agenda posted to the channel ahead of time. It looks a bit short today. Um, so if anyone's got other topics they want to add, just drop a note in the chat, and then we'll be sure to call on you. Um, so I guess let's get started with that. With one announcement. So last week was the enhancements freeze. Um, I did need to get a brief extension for the runtime class work that I had proposed. That was approved, and then we got the KEP merged. So that's on track. So I'll just put a note on that. Um, so I'll be moving forward there. So I'll just add that to the agenda and talk more about it later. Are there any other exceptions that anyone's aware of for KEPs, or is everything final?
I mean, the CSI kept it. We're gonna keep it in alpha. Is that right, Deep? Or did you
Yeah,
mean for
that's right.
beta?
That'll
Yeah,
be
so,
for this way. Yeah.
and then the GMSA, they asked us to keep it in beta for one more cycle, so that didn't need an update. Right. So I think your KEP is the only one, right, Patrick? I don't know of any others.
Okay.
What about the kubeadm stuff?
Yeah, we couldn't find resources for that, so I don't know. For now, we may be able to work on it, and maybe at the end just graduate it with kind of slipping it that through. But we don't, with no resources right now. And I believe Ben and his team at Pivot are looking to see if they can find some resources outside of Ben that's fully booked, but no decision yet.
Okay. And then Adelina's doing some investigations to see if we can replace one of the current test passes with one using kubeadm, which would help. Okay. Well, let me go back to the top of the list there. So, are you on the call, Kalia?
Yeah, I'm on the call.
Okay. So I see you added something about local traffic policy.
Yeah. So basically what we're seeing right now, not what we're seeing. So for 1.16, we introduced this feature, preserve diff. So that's signified by an annotation. And so based on that, what we do is we preserve the destination IP and we disable the routing mesh for load balancer ingress IPs. So this is what we have an internal customer at Microsoft that is using this for their health probes. But the issue is we didn't disable routing mesh for node port based on this. So I can make that fix and it'll be in 1.17. But they need, basically they can only use released binaries, so I can't give them a private. And I was hoping that I could backport this so that I could disable routing mesh for node port, because what happens is when they hit the node port, it gets load balanced across all of the nodes. So it's not really an accurate indicator of if the node is up and healthy or if the pod is up and healthy. So they black hole a lot of traffic.
Okay, and so what's the case that works?
So the case that works is for load balancer ingress IP. So it'd just be a one-line change where I also disable the routing mesh for node port. So yeah, that's what I'd be interested in backporting. I don't know if it's 1.15 or 1.16. I'll have to check when I first introduced that. Oh, I think they're using 1.15. So if I could backport to 1.15 or even 116, just something that's going to be faster than the 117 release. And so that also kind of ties into the local traffic policy. So basically, for that, we need DSR, and we have an issue filed on this, right? We need DSR, which is hopefully going to be supported in Vibranium, or is supported in Vibranium. And we also need to disable routing mesh for that. So there is the thing where I can at least partially fulfill that and disable routing mesh, as it were, like if that flag is set, or we can just wait and say that's fully unsupported right now and wait until DSR is available. And then from that, I would want to know if we'd be backporting that type of change to previous releases once the release is out.
Okay, so I'm just reading the issue right now. So this particular open issue has been moved to 17.
Yeah, and I think that would be feasible.
Well, I mean, no matter what, we have to check in a fix there first. But this issue doesn't talk about node ports.
Well, that's the definition of
Oh.
feature. The definition is that for load balancer and for node port type services, we would disable routing mesh.
Okay, and is this annotation specific to Windows, or is it there with Linux as well?
No, this annotation is specific to Windows. We kind of snuck it in last minute for 115. And the only customer that's using that right now is internal, or as far as I'm concerned, is internal.
Okay, so what I'm concerned about here is the guidance that I've had before is that generally the dot releases are not for new features. If there was something that was, intended to work but was broken, then that's where they'll accept some of the backports. And so, like, one example was we had a disk calculation that was bad and was causing pods to be wrongly evicted. That was accepted for a backport to versions 14 and 15, but we checked the fix directly into 16 first and then backported.
Yeah, we had a bug. I know we had a bug where if the node port was the same as some other port, it's usually for bugs, right?
Yeah. Is there testing in place for this? Because that's the other question that the release team would ask.
No testing in place for this. I don't think we've even really announced this as a feature except in the change log. So the first thing is I could disable the routing mesh for node port if that annotation is used. And I think I would consider that a bug fix. So we can hold off on the traffic policy, but.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't think these two changes are mutually exclusive of each other. So I think the right thing to do here is if the intent was for node port and the local the load balancer ingress to both be covered under the same flag, go ahead and submit a PR for that to 17 first, and then we can look at the scope of it there with the release team and see if that's something that would be acceptable or not.
So would this be fixing preserve? Okay, so preserve dip also has that we preserve the destination IP, and the traffic policy says we preserve the client IP. So these are kind of, I mean, they're related, but we can treat them individually.
Oh, wait, so you're saying you would need another annotation is what you're saying?
No, we don't need another annotation. So basically DSR handles handles preserving the source IP, right? So that's a condition of the external traffic policy or node local, whatever that's called. So we need DSR for that. Now preserve dip needs DSR and the preserve dip flag. So it preserves both the client IP and the destination IP and disables routing mesh. So as a feature, it encompasses more than just the other one.
But But DSR is going to need Windows Server 1909. I guess that's what it's going to be called.
So
Or is it going
that's
to
a
need
little,
something later than that?
no, I don't think it will need anything later than that. The thing is, like DSR has different parts of it supported, so like right now, DSR is supported for some scenarios, but not other. And the complete support, I think, is what we're waiting on.
It's partially supported in 1903 right now, and it will be fully supported in 1909.
Okay, so I mean, so I guess what's the next step here? I'm still not real clear on that.
Okay, so for me, I think the long term is to support external traffic policy, but in the short term,
and would that resolve 62046 or 62046 a bug fix rather than a feature?
Is that the one that was filed that's marked for 117?
Yeah, that's in the meeting notes.
I feel like that one would be more of a feature because we're going to implement that in, I mean, it's an existing feature of Kubernetes that's not currently implemented in Windows. So I don't know how you would classify that.
Well, it's not an enhancement issue, right? So it's not a feature technically.
Yeah.
Seems to be a Kubernetes issue, just like anything else.
Yeah, it's not anything new that is being designed, so I think it would be a bug fix. But the more pressing issue is the preserve dip, which is a feature, I suppose, that we added without a cap, but we added it, and so there's a bug where we also need to disable routing mesh for node port. The problem is we're going to have to explain preserve dip, and then we'll probably also have to provide, I mean, I sense that there's going to be some resistance there.
Okay. So I think what would be most helpful here is if you could get a specific issue opened describing the change that you want to do for the preserve diff, because that's going to be different from the issue that you linked in the notes. And so let's get a discussion done at the right scope there, describing the fix. I think it's related to the PR that merged that I have linked there. So go ahead and get a specific issue filed for that. And then let's get it merged into 17, and then we can talk about making a determination after we see what's actually there. I think it's definitely worth adding tests to this because what you're describing is something that's going to could change based on the Windows version there, and so I think we need some way to measure that.
Yeah. Okay, I'll create the issue, and then I'll create the PR for 117.
Okay. I see, Ben, you added some notes there. Did you have any other questions on that?
No, I mean, this was just the first I've heard about the preserve dip feature, so I was just trying to understand what it was and give some reference or other people who are similarly curious.
Oh. I deleted the link there in the doc. Crap. But that's the 7th. Okay. Yeah, if you could just fix the link in there, then that's awesome. Okay, so Deep, you're next on the list.
Hey, so what I wanted to talk about was around GMSA testing. So I think
Okay.
all the pieces for E2E right now is in. We have the end-to-end test modified, everything in the webhook, and all the enhancements that Jeremy did in order to make sure that the necessary AKS extensions are in place are all checked in.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if at some point in 117, Adelina can give the GMSA test a shot end to end. And then if it works stably, maybe a few times, then we can remove the skip GMSA test flag from the E2E test grid.
So is this in the staging job yet?
Yep. Sorry. No, it's not in the staging job yet. So I will add it there, but we still have to talk a little bit about where we would put this this job. Would we keep it in staging? That runs, so that one runs every 6 hours, I think now, or 4 hours. I don't remember. But the point is that with all the it's an extra machine that we need to deploy. So would we want this for every run?
Staging is fine for now, I assume.
Yeah, I mean,
Then again,
we're not changing GMSA stuff very often, right? So is there any type of run that we do outside of the every 6 hours?
There's a master run, that's sequential, that's a little bit rarer, but just a question, because I'm a little bit fuzzy around the GMSA thing. I don't remember exactly. So you deploy an extra node as the DC controller, the domain controller, but that's schedulable, right?
Right.
Oh, so it's basically just like any other node.
Yes, it's just that the test itself cannot be scheduled on that node, but other than that, other tests can run on
Other
that.
tests can. Oh,
Yeah.
Then I guess we can just add it, because now we're running with 3 machines per cluster. We're just splitting them into agent pools. I think we can keep it.
Yeah.
For
Jeremy,
all the
do you have
jobs.
What was that?
Do you have any concerns with that? Like everything should be runnable on the DC, just as any other Windows host, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just another member. Like you said, you just can't run the actual GMSA tests on that node.
Okay, then I'll try it this way. I'll split the 8 agent pools in 2. One, well, as it should, one to be the agent pool for the controller, and the other one's normal nodes. And then, but in total, we'll keep the same number of VMs, so it shouldn't be a problem. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
So then next step would be test in the staging, and then if everything goes through, fine.
Moved. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll look at the results next week, and then we can move it forward. Yeah, because when we graduate that to stable, we're going to want it covered in that same test pass as everything else. So. Okay. Anything else on that?
That's all I had.
Okay. And so the last thing I had on there was I had a link to the runtime class stuff. So at this point, we've got the KEP merged as implementable, but there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done here. And so the first thing that I was going to be working on was fixing some of the test passes that we need over in AKS engine, such that we can get containerd deployed in order to be able to test this stuff. And so that's going to take me probably a week or so. But there's a couple other items in there that could be done in parallel if anyone wants to take them on. The first one was we got an agreement that it's okay to add a new flag describing what the Windows build is from the kubelet. And so, within the KEP, I've got the source code linked, but it should be, a relatively straightforward thing to add, and then add unit tests for. And so if someone, wants to take that on, I'd be very grateful. It's a separate task that can just be kind of done and tested in isolation. It doesn't actually require containerd at all in order for that to go. So if anyone wants to take that, just ping me on Slack and let us know. The other group of changes is actually changing the CRI definition to add the runtime class handler, and that's something that I think can be unit tested with the CRI test framework. But I'm not sure whether or not the CRI API repo actually has tests that work with no CRI implementation. And so it may be possible to make the API changes without a working implementation. That's something I haven't looked at yet. I don't think we have. Is anyone familiar with that section? Well, I guess short of it, if there's anyone that wants to start looking at the CRI API changes, I'm pinging some folks here at Microsoft to see if I can get somebody to start looking at it. Otherwise, I'll be looking at it in probably a week or two. But those, anyway, I just wanted to call those out as areas where if someone wants to get started on those earlier, I'd be happy to have the help. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then Deep, did you just add a new?
Yeah, this was just like an update on the PR. We were wondering if it seems like it's LGTM'd. This is the PR from the one around pushing test images up. We were just curious, what are the next steps on that? Probably just getting it approved.
Do you want to talk about that, Claudio?
Sorry, which request?
Part 1 from add Windows container images support. Let me paste the link.
So basically this has been reviewed by quite a few people and it's got some LGTM. The next step would be to have someone from Google add some Windows nodes to the image promoter that they have and configure the job to also use the remote Docker URL config options. At the moment, regarding the image promoter, it's still something that has to be done in a Kubernetes repo. It's currently still in progress. I have a couple of pull requests, which also helps with that.
Oh, okay. Cool. I was just curious where it was because we were tracking it a bit from the CSI side of things because we need to push a couple of containers too. Yeah. Are the other PRs linked to this by any chance, Claudio?
Yeah, there are 3 parts to this pull request, part 1, part 2, part 3. You can track them by its bug report.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's everything on the list, and we're out of time. Any other last minute updates from anyone?
All right. Have a great day, everybody. And Patrick, send me the link with the download. Thank you.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone. Bye.
Yep.